My boss is terrible, period, I gotta punctuate it. I said I loved your shirt, but behind your back I said I hate it. The lightning strike me down, if I lied, me no one be around when my tongue's untied. Everybody says it's okay, all the little things I say with my big fat mouth. La 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 la. My big fat mouth.
My big fat mouth gets me in trouble.
Okay, so that is the last time for that, because this is the last message in this series. And I said, yeah, I know, it's hard, but I've saved the best till last, and it's going to be super awesome. My aunt was here first service, and I couldn't believe the irony of her being here for this series. I'm just playing. My aunt Patty. And so anyway, but she had a good kick out of that. Nobody else did. They thought I was being really disrespectful. So my big fat mouth got me in trouble as well. Today, though, we're going to wrap up with one of the most important issues that we face. But before we do, I wanted to tell you something that I heard in the community this past week. I meet with a group of pastors for breakfast, and they let me know about something that happened recently, and I needed to make sure you guys were aware of it. One of the pastors there admitted to having an affair with somebody that's on the city council, so they're two high-profile people, and I hate to give these details, but I need to share with you just a little bit of the details, which is that's all a lie. There's nothing that I'm not even telling the truth to tell you that, because nothing of that happened. Today's message is on gossip, and I just wanted to see if you would lean in to that, and I noticed that some of you guys were almost taking notes. So anyway, but please don't tweet it. Some people over here, is it going to take a minute? Because I realized first service it took a minute for some people to kind of download. They were still going, who is it? Tell me more. Today we're talking about gossip. One of the areas, yeah, there's nobody having an affair, so relax. Okay. Gossip, maybe they are, and we just don't know about it. But anyway, you have to get that from somebody else that learns to gossip. But gossip is the biggest problem, bar none, that I see, not just in the church down the road, not just in other people's lives, but in our church and in our lives and in my life personally. It is the biggest issue we have to address. It is the one that is probably the most marginalized issue that we have. It's so easy to go, it's not a big deal, but it rates up there as some of the biggest immorality problem that we will ever have, and it will cause more devastation and stunt, if not take the power of God out of our lives. I just want to give you one reference. Today, I'm going to ask you, please take some notes today, because you might think, hey, this is for somebody else, but the truth is I don't believe that it's affecting just one of us. This affects all of us. So please take some notes today, because you're going to want to be able to come back to this to help apply it, because it's going to be very practical today, okay? But I want to give you one reference, and you can write this down. This won't be up on the screen, but I just want to give you one reference that you can write down. Romans chapter 1, verse 28 says this, "Furthermore, just as they did not think it was worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to depraved minds, so that they would do what they ought not have been done." Verse 29, they have become filled with every kind of wickedness, every greed and depravity. They are all full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent new ways of doing evil, and they disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decrees that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but they also approve of those who practice them. That's a big, long list of some horrible things. I've never really preached a message on that because, it's pretty negative to start with, isn't it? But what I want you to see about this list is right in the middle of some of the most horrendous things you can do, right in the middle of the list is gossip. Gossip is so dangerous. Yet it's so easy. It's so easy to do. I don't know if you know how easy it is to do. And in fact, the Bible teaches it this way. In Proverbs 18, if you want to write down, Proverbs 18:8, it says that it's like tasty morsels of food. meaning food that you would overeat. Anybody have one of those? Maybe it's sweets or salty. And so what I have is a paraphrase of that would be it's like Pringles, because it's not like sweet, right? Because gossip's kind of salty, right? And so when you see the commercial on Pringles, you hear the thing pop. Ooh, that's kind of good. And but the hard part is you just can't eat one, right? Once you start. So if does anybody want Pringles today? If you want, come on up and I'll give you this. And you can share it with people, but you can only give them one. See how that works, okay? You can share it with anybody in the room, but they only get one, and see how that works. See if you're not tasting for more, right? Because when you start to share that, it's like if somebody tells you just a little bit, you're going to feel, and that's why Proverbs 18 is so clear. It's like Pringles. Just try to eat one and see how it goes. But once you start going down the path, it's very hard to stop. Anybody besides me? Isn't that how it works? And that's exactly what it's paraphrasing. It's saying, hey, what the truth is that gossip destroys. And it's listed among the sins, just so you know. That's why I gave you the reference, Romans chapter 1, that is deserving of death. I don't want you to think this is a small thing. It is the most marginalized sin in the church, bar none. If somebody does complete immorality, we understand how to put that down and how to judge that and what to do with that. But when it comes to gossip, we all go, yeah, but it's not a big deal because it's very complicated. But today we got to get into it, because here's the thing I understand. Words have the power to speak life. Words have the power to speak death, and the greatest death that's spoken is gossip. It hurts more than you can ever imagine for people. And today we're going to tell you how to overcome it. Okay? Before we overcome it, though, we got to talk about why it hurts so much. And then before we talk about how it hurts so much, I'm going to just define it. Okay? So that's kind of the roadmap in reverse order. We're going to define what it is so you know how to identify it. Then we're going to explain who does it actually hurt, because as you see that it's hurtful, all of a sudden your eyes are going to be open, because what Satan wants you to do is he wants you to do this. He wants you to go, hey, it's so complex you probably can't change it. Oh, it's not a big deal, right? Just keep doing it. Everybody does it, so that means that, hey, just because it's common practice means that we should just keep doing it, and all the lemmings go over the cliff together. And the truth is, it is probably the biggest quencher of the power of God in the church. We cannot go further without this. Next Sunday, we're going to come back, and we're going to have a message, because we're preparing for this fall. We're celebrating 8 years, and we're going to be doing a big thing for National Back to Church Sunday to get as many people in as we can. And we're going to talk about next Sunday, talking about how to influence. Okay, how to be an influencer. And we're going to look at the book of Philemon, one of my favorite books in the Bible, and it's an incredible story. But before we go there, here's what I know. If we don't apply this, next week won't work. You could do everything we talk about next week, but if you continue to gossip, you will kill that. It's like putting poison in water. It's like, hey, a little bit of poison goes a long ways, right? But gossip will destroy. Gossip is a sin, and it doesn't mean that you should. I just want to make sure we're clear. Some of you guys take the Bible very wooden literal. It doesn't mean you should kill somebody that gossips. You might feel like it, but don't do that, okay? Just want to be clear. What it means is this. It means that, hey, it's a sin that brings death. If Satan had a way of killing and stealing and destroying, gossip would be his language, because it is so damaging, and we're going to tell you why, okay? So write down some notes. Here's the first thing I want you to write down. The definition of gossip, okay? It's very simple. That's why we don't even have to have a slide for it. The definition of gossip is this: to talk about a situation where somebody's not part of the problem or the solution. Okay? That's the whole message in a nutshell. Some of you, that's really all you need. When you talk, you need to ask yourself a question. The person I'm talking to, are they part of the problem or the solution? If they're not, then that's gossip. By the way, if you're listening and you're not part of the problem or the solution, that's gossip. We're going to get into that. It's not just talking about it, it's listening to it. It's participating in it. As a speaker, you got to think about that. You got to think about, hey, am I part of the problem or solution? Maybe it's not my situation to solve, and it's very easy to do that. That's a very easy way to put it, but it's very hard. Everything we're going to talk about today is going to run counterintuitive. I understand that. That's why this is stuff I want you to take notes on, because you're going to need this as a pattern to go, hey, once you recognize Satan's patterns, you can change them. But it's like anybody that plays golf or skis, or I don't know what other sports you guys do, football, we've been talking about that the last few weeks, is that whatever you practice, you'll become like that, right? And so to change a habit, it's really hard. I'm not a good golfer, and I never intended to be, and then I've been playing more recently, and the problem is that I got some really bad habits. And it's very hard to overcome them. This is how I like to hold the thing, and this is how I'm supposed to hold it, and it's taken some time. This is how it is for us. These are natural tendencies that we have to chase. So that's why I'm saying, write it down. Take a look. Every time you get ready to say something, you might have to ask, hey, am I sharing something where I'm not part of the problem or the solution? Am I telling someone that's not part of the problem or the solution? So let me explain, because I think this will inspire us a little bit to say, hey, here's why it's so damaging. Who does it hurt? The first person that it hurts, number one, is the person who's talked about. The person who's spoken about. Gossip hurts the person who's spoken about. Proverbs puts it this way. We're going to be taking a look. Most of the references we have comes from the book of Proverbs. It's really the wisdom book in the Bible. It's amazing the advice that you get in small little snapshots in the book of Proverbs. The problem with Proverbs is it's written in a certain format that's not wrong. It's just different than we're used to. We're used to going, hey, we want to talk about gossip, so turn to chapter 1. Chapter 1 is gossip. Chapter 2 is this. But unfortunately in Proverbs, it's like a sprinkling effect. So he goes, let me talk about gossip a little while, I'll talk about something else, then I'll talk about gossip a little while, then I'll talk about something else. And so we're going to have to kind of jump around just a little bit, because that's how the wisest man writes. So it's a little beyond the way I would understand it. Okay, Proverbs 16, verse 28, and I don't know if we put 28 in there, but 28 is the verse. And it says this, a perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. Everybody understand that? Let me ask you a question. Has anybody ever been hurt by gossip? Has anybody ever walked into a room and you realize somebody was gossiping about you? What does it sound like? Nothing, right? Sometimes the further you go in your leadership, you really don't care, right? I mean, you kind of marginalize that stuff. You come in and you go, I don't care that they're talking. I'd rather them talk to somebody else because I don't want to hear it, right? That's a bad response. That's a coping skill. But I want to point it out, because here's the thing. Most of us, if we understood how bad it hurts us when we do it, we might not want to do it then. If you go, hey, what I really would like is if somebody knows something that's a flaw or that I'm going to get hurt by, don't tell me, tell somebody else. Is that right? But it hurts the person that you're talking about. By the way, gossip never helps the person you're talking about. Did you know that? Even if it doesn't hurt their feelings, but most of the time it does. Most of the time it starts a war that you don't want to fight, right? It's a propaganda war. That's what we've all learned, right? And this is the danger in gossip. But gossip never really helps the person that you're gossiping about, because they don't know that you're talking about it, right? They learn it indirectly. They hear these things. They feel the tension. It causes problems, but it's not something that's correctable for them. So what you do is you point out a flaw and you go, well, it's true. Remember what we said about truth, though? That truth is only what's good for helping to build other people up. So it hurts the person that spoke about. There is a warning, though, that I want you to get this morning, and it's this. If you've been gossiped about, hurt will lead sometimes to insecurity. And then unfortunately, there's two coping skills. One is that sometimes people just feel like, hey, it defines me, and I get very depressed. That's one thing. That's bad, right? It defines me. That their words define me. And now I feel insecure. Every time I go to do something, I can't do it because those words are in the back of your head. You have anything like that? Some people do it with sports. Somebody said something about them one time. They heard a criticism one time, or they heard people whispering behind their back, and now they'll never do it again, right? And that's one thing that it can do. The other thing it can do is you learn how to toughen up a little bit. You go, hey, if I get hurt, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hurt other people. I don't know if that makes sense. It doesn't actually work, but it's what we naturally learn how to do. We go, hey, if I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you, right? So if somebody hurts me, I'm going to hurt somebody else, and then they'll hurt them instead of me. They'll go after them. Or I'll hurt the person that hurts me. That's more the likely, right? Think about it. If somebody says something about you, what's the first thing you want to do? First thing I want to do is go, oh, that's how it is. And I can recognize every flaw. It's a gift that I have, okay? I can recognize every flaw that they have, and I go, oh, you want to gossip about me? Let me show you what I can do. And then let's start the propaganda machine. That's no problem. I know a lot of people too, and let's just see how this plays out, right? I'm going to put you in the ground. That's why you'll never gossip about me, because I'll, right, hammer you. Some of you guys, that's exactly where you're at. And what I want to warn you about is this. This verse applies to you. You can go out and hurt the person that speaks ill of you, but you can't be a follower of Christ and do that. That's right. You can't do that because, see, that's what happens is that slowly, in fighting monsters, we become the very monsters that we're trying to fight. And we don't even realize it. And oftentimes, the person that's hurting people the worst, you know why they're doing it? Because somebody hurt them. And they're thinking, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to hurt. And the truth is that is a warning for the person that hurts. Believe me, it starts something in them, and all of a sudden we start fighting back and forth, and you end up hurting yourself when you gossip about somebody else. And the truth is that gossip hurts the person that spoke about. It never helps them. So if you're gossiping, just realize you're not doing anything that's going to help, okay? Number 2, gossip hurts the listener. The biggest point that I have today that probably will be the one that most people don't even understand that they're doing wrong is that listening to gossip is a sin. Ooh. And it is the hardest and most complicated issue to deal with, so it's one of the reasons why we would like to avoid this, because when somebody says something, how do I shut this stuff down? And we're going to give you some practical ways to do it in a minute, but I need you to first understand that, well, I only listened to it. I didn't participate in it. If you listen to it, it's wrong. Let me explain. Proverbs 17, verse 4, and I don't think 4 was in your outline, so I just want to highlight that. Proverbs 17, verse 4, a wicked person listens to deceitful lips, and a liar pays attention to a destructive tongue. Who listens? A wicked person. That doesn't sound like a follower, does it? Because we listen to gossip, we give it fuel. You see, because it takes 2 people to gossip. I don't know if you knew that. In other words, a person that's talking to themselves isn't gossiping to themselves, right? So if you leave the conversation, which you're capable of doing, they're no longer gossiping. But if you listen, it's a sin deserving. I didn't say this. Go back and read it in Romans. Gossip is a sin deserving of death. That means both the person who's saying it and the person who's listening to it. Ooh, that's kind of, I don't know if I agree with that, right? But it's true. Because as we entertain it, here's the problem with the listener. We're thinking, well, it doesn't hurt me. And I can tell you from several books that I've been reading a book by a neurologist, and they've been explaining, this guy's not even necessarily a Christian, but he has backed up this stuff. It's amazing how that the Bible is full of psychology we don't even know. What it's saying is you can't listen to this stuff and not be affected by it. You think you can. And the truth is, our intuitive mind thinks we can actually listen to things and it not affect us, but the truth is you can't. You can't listen to things and not affect you, and they can prove it. I can show you statistically, but the Bible teaches that should be good enough. But it is actually proven that if I were to be here and I had stuff flashing behind me or I had stuff playing behind me, it would affect you more than you would ever think, because what you listen to, it affects you, okay? And I'm telling you, you have to shut that stuff down. But the truth is, it hurts. It hurts the listener. I want to give you a couple of things. I want to tell you one thing. It's just kind of an FYI. If once they finish talking to you and they leave you, they'll talk about you. You want to write that down? Now, this will be hard for some, because here's the issue for the listener, for some of us. We like it that they come to us, right? In our worldly, wicked mind, and I have one, so I understand, we like to have that information, right? They come to me to share that information. But what you don't realize is if you're participating with a person like that, they'll also talk about you, right? That's what you should be thinking. If you're entertaining it, realize that when they're done talking about this other person, they'll start talking about you, because it's the same. I'll give you another example that might help somebody in the room. If you're having an affair with a married person and you think they're going to leave you for them, right? They're going to leave their spouse and come be with you. And I've seen this play out. Don't be surprised when they have an affair on you. Some of the people have seen it and they're very devastated by it and can't believe it, because it's like, well, they really love me, right? But it's the same, right? People have a pattern of behavior. So just realize that what you're doing does that. Here's the other thing, and maybe you need to write this in the margin. What you permit, you promote. If you permit people to gossip to you, you're promoting the gossip. You're doing it without even necessarily agreeing, but you're entertaining the gossip. We're going to tell you how to deal with it in just a minute, but I just want to make sure you understand it hurts the listener. I know a lot of people are going to be saying, hey, what if I'm the trusted person, like we talked about last week? Because last week we said, hey, before you go and confront somebody, you need to talk about it with your trusted person. That's not untrue. That even in the book of James, it says, hey, you need to go to that person, because sometimes if I go to solve a conflict and I haven't talked to my trusted person, I'm going to mess it all up. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about that to frame it, but I just want to understand that if you allow it to turn into gossip, what is the gossip? Well, you're not part of the problem or the solution. It's going to mess up your mind too. And there's ways to cut that off where you go, hey, as a trusted advisor, a piece of it might be that you are part of the solution, but be careful where it goes from there. Okay? Because some of us are codependent, which means we need people to need us. And if that's where you are, be careful listening to what people have to say. You might need to shut that down first, because the truth is, as long as you need them to do it, you're going to let them say things that they shouldn't, and it's going to affect you. It hurts you. It's not godly. A person that listens to gossip, it's a sin. Okay? Just want to be clear. Number 3, gossip hurts the speaker. Gossip hurts the speaker. The person that says it, it's hurting them too. In fact, it says this in Proverbs. Proverbs, in the New Living Translation, it puts it this way. It says, Proverbs 25:9, it says, when arguing with your neighbor, don't betray another person's secrets. Others may accuse you of gossip, and you will never regain your good reputation. Some of us didn't mean it that way. Some of us talk a lot, and we verbally process things. So we didn't necessarily mean it as gossip, but luckily I've had some godly people in my life, and even as a pastor, they said, hey, when you say that, that's too much. And if you were to say that, some people aren't going to understand what you're saying, and it's going to ruin your reputation. What it means is this: you could do a lot of good. We could do the things we're going to talk about next Sunday, and gossip could negate the whole thing. That's why it's so dangerous and so subtle. Because think about it. If you found out, hey, the person that you trust the most is gossiping about you, what does that do to you? Right? They're betraying your confidence. They're telling things about you, right? It's unbelievable how hurtful and painful this stuff can do. Here's something that maybe is a point worth writing down. Talking badly about someone else when they're not around says more about you than it does about them. You see, because at the core of gossip, let me tell you what it is. It's insecurity that you're saying, hey, in order for me to be strong, here's what the core is. You want to know what it is? I need you to be weak. If you're weak, I'm strong. At the core of gossip is a scarcity mentality. This is why you can't gossip and be a follower of Jesus. Now, you can be saved, but you can't be a follower of Jesus. Because Jesus said, hey, I came to bring life, and I came to bring it to the full. In another place it says, I came to bring abundant life. That's not scarcity. But see, what it is for the gossip is it's going, hey, there's only so much affection. It reminds me of high school, right? When you liked a girl or a guy or whatever, and you realized, hey, only one of us is going to be able to get them. So if I put you down, they're going to like me better, right? Isn't that how it works? Sometimes they didn't like you depending on how you fought, right? If you fought really unfair, then they really didn't like that. So you started to become very subtle in how you did that. Let me slip you some information. Let me be a little bit deceitful. And if I push you down, it builds me up. And what I'm telling you today is that is not a Christian worldview at all. And some of us, that's exactly where we are. If I push you down, it builds me up because there's only so much love. There's only so much affection. There's only so much money. And Jesus is saying, I am your source. And if I'm your source, you don't need to push other people down to be strong. In fact, if you do, you're not my follower. Martin Luther King put it this way. He said, hate doesn't overcome hate. You see, the danger with gossip is this: to become the speaker. Some of us, we're justifying it because we're going, but you don't know what they did to me, so I've got to push them down because it's a fight, and I got to push them down. And as long as we're pushing them down, we think we're building ourselves up. But the truth is when people hear gossip from you, it's ruining your reputation. Take it from one that's done it. If I were to be real blunt. By the way, it's not if you gossip, it's when, right? I mean, come on, right? Everybody struggles with this, so if we were to be real honest, we all struggle. I have struggled, but it ruins your reputation because with the person that's listening to it, it's like listening to news that's really bad and negative, but after they leave, you go, man, I don't know if I want to be around that person because every time I'm around them, they just talk so bad about everybody. And I just feel so horrible, and I'm listening, but I really don't like it. And so it's saying more about you. It's vilifying you. You have no idea what you're doing. It's destroying you. And the biggest warning here is this, is that the people that do gossip the most are the people that are hurt the most. And God wants to do a work in your life, because until God does a work, you're going to continue to do it because you're going, there's something you're getting out of it to talk about somebody else. And we're going to talk about how to overcome it. But I wanted you to see that it hurts everybody that's involved. Did you know that? Not one person is helped by doing this, but everybody is hurt. The person that's talked about, by the way, you can't help them by talking about them. Did you know that? You can't. The person who is listening to it, and the person who is doing it. Okay, so how do we overcome it, all right? The keys to overcoming gossip, before we go there, there's two things you got to think about. One is this. If you started to feel like, hey, man, you hit a nerve, I have done that. I have done that. I have talked about that stuff. There's two things you're going to want to do with it. It's two things that Satan would make you do. It's kind of like a path that goes, when I feel guilt, here's what I do. It's just natural. The first thing is this, is that I would say, hey, I'm so bad, I start to feel convicted, and now there's nothing I can do about it, and I start feeling really bad about myself, and I just keep going down and down and down until I feel like I just feel depressed. I don't think there's anything I can do about it, so I just give up. You ever done it with a diet? It's like, hey, I tried it, I stepped on the scale, I haven't lost weight yet, I'm done. So who cares? It doesn't matter what I do, right? And then I just eat more, and it makes it worse. That's not what God wants you to do, but that's what Satan wants you to do. Second thing is this. Deny it. Listen to what I say and make an exception for yourself that, well, I know what you're saying, but it doesn't work like that in the real world. Don't do that. It's not going to help you. You understand what I'm saying? So the answer is this. What God wants us to do is a good old Southern Baptist word that if you think about it, Southern Baptist, you might not want to do it, okay? But the word is repentance, okay? And when I think of repentance, I see somebody sweating and just screaming at me and telling me hellfire and brimstone. But that's not what it means. I just want to make sure you know what it means. It simply means this. It means change directions. That's it. It means I don't want you to get stuck in guilt. I want you to confess that it's wrong, and then I want you to repent, which means I want you to take a step in a different direction. And we're going to tell you what that direction is today, okay? So don't get stuck in guilt. Don't get stuck in denial. What you want to do is you want to repent, which means I got to change. And I'm telling you, from somebody that is a pastor and that knows a lot of people, everybody that I know in the room, okay, I don't know everybody here, so maybe you don't struggle. Everybody I see in this room that I know, we all struggle, don't. You can sit real still and act all religious if you want to, but I know you, okay? And you know me. So we have to get real. But the reason why we want to get real isn't because I want to offend you. I want to get real because the power of God is going to come with this, and the power of God is going to leave us. The power of God has left us when we do this. You understand? So this is huge. But if we started to apply this, God could change everything, okay? It's amazing what God could do today. So I want to tell you, how do you control gossip? How to control gossip? What do we do? How do we practically do this? I'm going to tell you how you do it based off of God's word. Number one, you got to guard your ears. If you're in any profession that is out doing construction work, and some of us have done that, or we've been around mechanical stuff, do you know anybody that's lost hearing because they didn't protect their ears? It's true, isn't it? Equally so, you got to protect your spiritual ear. I'm telling you. You got to protect your spiritual ear. And now I'm going to tell you how. How do I stop gossip? How would I stop this thing if I wanted to? It's found in a chapter of the Bible, Matthew chapter 18, where Jesus gives some advice, and here's how he puts it, okay? I'll just tell you what it is. Matthew chapter 18 and verse 15, he says this, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their faults just between the two of you. I pause just because I want to make sure you hear that part. Who do you tell? Just between the two of you. Does that make sense? If they listen, you will have won them over. All right, I'm going to pause. As a pastor for the last 8 years in this church, I will tell you that the number one piece of advice that is not taken, that's 100% biblical, is this. That when I sit down and talk to people and counsel people and do with people, I can tell you what advice they ignore the most is this right here. They will have every reason in the world not to do this. And most of the time, they'll end the conversation by saying, hey, before I talk to the other person, I don't have a problem anymore. but yet they do. The reason why it's so difficult, and I understand why, because it's the same thing for me. When somebody does me wrong, the first impulse that I have is, one, I'm kind of irritated with that person, and they're probably doing something that causes me not to want to talk to them. Is that true? So I'm going, hey, we have a reason why this became a problem. So now I don't want to talk to them. I want to go, man, they really irritated me. And the first thing I want to do is I want to call somebody that's my support to go, hey, I need you to be on my side. Right? And so I need to go tell you what they did to me. Is that right? Man, this is really quiet in here today. I think I'm hitting a nerve, but that's okay. I want to call my posse, right? I want to tell them, right? What's wrong with that? I want to build up my side because they're wrong, right? Well, let me tell you why that's such a problem. Here's where the problem lies. Because you didn't tell the person. But see, you got the issue off of you. See, what prompts us to give the negative feedback is we get this feeling like, hey, that's not right. I got to do something to fix it. But the way we relieve the tension, because the tension is not bad, there's tension. They did something wrong. But instead of going to them and saying, hey, by the way, this is a problem, what we do is we go talk to somebody else and say, hey, do you think this is a problem? I don't know. Let's go watch them and see, right? Let's go see. So then they sit and they watch the person doing the same behavior, but they don't say anything to the person. Then they bring somebody else in. And they're all sitting there talking, and then a year later, I'm just talking about a real life example, a year later they come to you and say, hey, by the way, after we've been vilifying you for over a year, we want to confront you with this problem. And now it's a huge problem, right? And it doesn't end well. So I'm just going to tell you that it didn't help anybody that's involved, because the person is going to continue to repeat that behavior if you don't tell them about it. That's why Jesus is saying this. He's going, hey, if you tell them, it doesn't mean they'll accept it. But can I tell you something? Just out of experience, 95% of the time, if you do this, this is all that's needed, and it fixes the problem. Did you know that? 95% of the time, I believe it. 95% of the time, if you don't do this, your relationship will end. You might as well not even continue on in that relationship, because if you're going to gossip behind their back, I can tell you where it's going. You might as well end it right now. But instead, we will perpetuate it, and we carry it out, and it causes so much tension, and there's so much energy that goes into the gossip and the people that are gossiping behind and solving problems with people that are not part of the problem or solution. And it takes us away from the mission that God has, because we're never going to do it. But by the way, we don't do it, and I can tell you why, because it's very painful. Now, I'm not saying there's not exceptions, all right? If somebody's abusive, that's why we said, hey, you may need somebody trusted to say, hey, is this what I should be doing? That's absolutely right. I'll give one caveat, though, for some of us that are leaders. Some of us have learned more people skills. Some of us have learned more manipulative skills, quite honestly. Some of us have learned skills that go, hey, I can overpower you with my words. I can be very quick-witted with my words. And so what happens is people gossip about us, and then we think to ourselves, oh, it's them. And I want to just warn you just a little bit today to say, hey, not everything comes in a nice, neat little package, because not everybody's made like we are, where we go, hey, we're just very vocal and conflict-oriented. And because they're not, then what happens? Then they gossip about us, and we go, oh, see, they're wrong. But we need to ask ourselves, we need to ask ourselves, am I approachable? Are they gossiping about us because we don't give room for anybody to say anything? And so the only way somebody can get to us is to knock us off our saddle. And so the truth is we cause people to have struggle. Now, if you're gossiping, that's not an excuse to gossip. I'm just telling you, if you're like a person that's struggling with, everybody's always talking behind my back, you need to ask yourself, am I approachable? Make yourself more approachable. Be more forgiving when you go, hey, I hear you've been talking about my hat, but let's try to solve the problem, right? And make it more comfortable. But what I'm telling you is, if you're entertaining gossip and you're not doing this can be devastating. And it doesn't help. Who does it hurt? It hurts the person spoke about, it hurts the listener, and it hurts the person speaking about it, because it never solves the problem. And by the time you get there, right, by the time a year later you're coming to do it, I can tell you what, it's not going to work. That's why Jesus said, hey, what's the first thing you got to do? Go to that person. If they're super abusive and you need to make sure, hey, I need this to be a safe environment, I understand that, okay? Have a trusted person you can talk to. If you're the trusted person, guess what you need to say? I'm going to tell you one question that will solve all your gossip problems. Can I tell you what it is? If you want to stop listening to gossip, right in the conversation, if you realize, hey, this thing has twisted, you need to ask this question. Why are you telling me? That's a little pointed, isn't it? But it works if you work it, I'm telling you. Because what you're really asking is, and you need to learn how to say that in a very nice manner, but as they're telling you, and then they go, well, let me just tell you one more thing. Whoa. Why are you telling me? I don't need to hear all the details of this, right? And then the other question that goes right along with it is, hey, let me ask you a question. Have you talked to them about that yet? Oh, no, I could never talk to them about it. See, a gossip, here's how they're going to end the conversation. They're going to go, hey, let me tell you about them, but don't tell them that I told you this. If you're saying that, can I tell you something? If you end the sentence by saying, don't tell them I told you this, that's gossip. And it's killing us. And it's a sin worthy of death. It's speaking death. You're speaking the words of Satan. You might not realize it because you're hurting the person you spoke about because they're never going to change as long as you're gossiping behind their back. You're hurting the listener because you're causing them to have to listen to this, and you're tainting their view. So every time they see that person, they have doubts, but they're in bondage because they can't say anything about it, right? And you're hurting yourself because you're not doing what God said, and it's squashing the power of God in your life. I'm telling you, guard your ears. Now, it doesn't mean that you stay in bad relationships. It goes, hey, well, that means then I'm stuck in this perpetual cycle. No, Matthew 18 says, hey, if they don't listen, then you bring in a trusted advisor. But to do what? With that person. Hey, we're going to come and sort this out. So you bring trusted people to say, hey, you need to listen to reason. I'm not the only one that sees this. This is a problem. But we're going to that person. If they still don't listen, it says bring them before the church. In our case, the elders of the church. And if they still don't listen, you know what it says? Cut off fellowship. Now, that's going to be hard for some of us. But it's biblical. In fact, in the book of Proverbs, let me tell you what it says. Proverbs says this: if somebody continues to do this, if somebody continued to gossip, quite honestly, you know what it says to do? Proverbs 20, verse 19. Proverbs 20, verse 19. A gossip betrays confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. Now, I know you guys are thinking, John, you talk a lot, so we need to avoid you. That's probably not a bad thing, but it doesn't mean just the amount that you're talking. What it means is somebody that's telling you too much. That's what it means. You're saying too much. Somebody brought up first service, they said, hey, what do you do when somebody says that as a prayer request? You ever heard that? Some people gossip, and it's disguised as a prayer request. Let me tell you, I want to pray for so-and-so, and then they go on a 30-minute thing where they tell you all the details of this person's life. You got to stop it, right? And we have to cut that off at some point and go, hey, I mean this very kindly, but you can't share all that information. You see, I've seen it even in small groups where the husband doesn't come, and maybe the husband's a horrible person, right? I mean, there's a lot of horrible husbands. I've been one, so I understand. And so they go to group, and what do? They bash the husband. But the whole time they disguise it in prayer. Please pray for my husband. And God answers their prayer, and the husband shows up. But guess what? The group will never accept them because they know every flaw and detail about their life because they told people stuff that was not part of the problem or the solution. And now that person would never be accepted. You understand what I'm saying today? That's why it's so dangerous. This works when you work it. And when you get to the last stage, it's not to say we're doing this vindictively, but we're saying, hey, if you're going to continue to go down this path, if every time I see you, you're going to continue to gossip to me, this is toxic. And the hardest person this is going to hit is the person who has the insecurity, and you're actually happy that somebody is coming to tell you the inside information. I used to like it because I'm very politically minded, so I enjoyed it because I like to have the ammunition. Hey, I got my feelers, so I know what everybody's doing. And now I know something about you, so I can use it against you. You know how bad that is? You know how satanic that is? You know how horrible that is? We're going, hey, you don't need to have inside information. You got to cut that off to bring life because it's all about what somebody said and this person said that, and I'm going to tell you what they said, and they're talking about you, and we're doing all this stuff behind the scenes and never bringing the players into the room to solve the problem. That's of Satan. It's all hidden and backbiting and lies and everything that it said in Romans chapter 1 that's destroying us. And the place that's destroying the most is the church because Satan understands, hey, it's so subtle. And it's so complicated, and we've got to stop it. You're codependent. Here's the problem that you have. You're going, oh, they love me. I need them. But not only do I want to help them, I need them to let me help them. I need them. I know so much about them. And so you're letting those people come and dump this information on you, and it doesn't really bother me because I'm just listening, and I'm helping them sort through it. But you haven't helped the person that spoke about because you can't tell them. It's not helping the person who you're allowing to gossip because it hurts them. And by the way, it's hurting you as the listener. There's no other way to put it. It hurts you. It affects you. Every time you see that person, you know things you shouldn't. And now you're tainted. Even if the information is wrong, even if the accusations are false, you're tainted by how you see that person now, aren't you? That's why it's so dangerous. That's why it's a fire. It's why Satan's greatest tactic. He'll destroy everything with this. Guard your ears. By the way, they're not really your friend. See, they just want to dump. They have this incessant need to dump this information. And that's why they're coming to you. As soon as they're done with you, though, by the way, they'll do it about you. Ask me how I know. Right? If they're talking to you about it, believe me, when they get disgruntled with you, they'll talk to somebody else about you. They'll say the same lies about you. Be careful what you're doing. This is why this works. If your brother sins against you, go to your brother. If they don't listen, try it again. But never to be done, never to cut them off. If we do, then here's how we do it, right? We pray for them. Don't hold on to the resentment. They said this, they said that. Guard your ears. Second, close your mouth. Ooh. Proverbs 21:23, I'll let the word of God speak for itself. It says, watch your tongue and keep your mouth shut. I just want to be clear. I didn't say that, but I think the Bible just said shut up. Okay, but anyway. And you will stay out of trouble. I read a great book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's a great leadership book. And it was about this guy that he helps companies that have become million, if not billion-dollar companies, and he helps them go to the next level. He goes, hey, what got you here won't get you there. And one of the things that he says is, hey, some of you guys, you're not very nice in how you talk to people. He said, but you know what's easier than being nice? Not being mean. And the easiest way not to be mean, you know what it is? Isn't to say nice things. It's to not say mean things. That's what Christians should learn. Sometimes we just need to shut our mouth, right? Oh, I know something about that. Oh, I know something about so-and-so. And it's just burning in us to tell about this other person so we can push them down and push them down. And I'm mad at them, so I need to, somebody says something nice about them, so, you don't know about them, right? I understand. Oh, they hurt my feelings, so let me tell you about them, right? If that's where we're at, I'm telling you, it says more about us than the other place. We got to close our mouth. We have to control what we say. This entire series we've been saying, hey, we have to slow down our speech. We have to consider, hey, is that person part of the problem or the solution? You understand? It's probably going to mean we have to talk a little bit less in order to accomplish that. A very easy rule of thumb, it's found in the book of Luke. Jesus says, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Luke chapter 6. Another way of putting that is, would you want somebody else to say this about you? I've been thinking about that. I went, hey, if somebody's going to a trusted advisor to say, hey, how could I best approach this person? I don't think I would mind that. I do think I would mind if they shared intimate details of things that I've done. I think that would bother me. I think if I shared stuff in privacy or they started to frame and reframe things that I've said and things that I've done and there was no context to it, I think that would really make me mad, right? So why do we do it? Because here's the problem. I can tell you why we do it and why we open our mouth. The majority of us, we're not set out to gossip, but somebody did it to us and they hurt us. And so all of a sudden we started the propaganda machine on the other side. Hey, let me tell you about them. Let me tell you what they did. Well, they misframed that, so let me just boom, 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 boom. And Satan is having his greatest day while we divide up. And I want to tell you today, Martin Luther King had it right. Hate cannot destroy hate. Only love can do that. Somebody's got to go first. And the truth is that just because people are talking about us does not give us a license to talk about them. Do you hear what I'm saying? You see, what is at the root for us, what is at the root of the problem for us is this. Gossip. You want to know what it claims? We'll put it up here on the screen. You can write it down. Gossip claims this, that because you're weak, I'm strong. I'm strong because you're weak. That's what it is. Right? If I push you down, it builds me up. Maybe it's because you hurt me. Now I've got to hurt you so that I can push myself up. And the reason is because we're focused on what people say. We are obsessed. Can I tell you what's crippled me in my life? What other people say, right? It's a prison. They said it. But you know what? I've seen it. It's easier to see in other people. I've seen the same thing. They'll show me stuff. They'll say, you see what they said? You see their text? You see what they said? You see what they said? You see what they said? That's why I have to do this. That's why I have to retaliate. That's why I had to do all these bad things. That's why I had to tell lies about them. That's why I had to become a monster myself. Because I'm fighting monsters, so I have to be one. And if I'm the biggest monster, then they can't get me. You know what's at the root of that? Fear. They're going to get me. You see, gossip claims if you're weak, then I'm strong. So if you say bad things about me, I got to say bad things about you so I can be stronger. Because I come at you with strength. But that's not what the gospel says. The gospel proclaims, right? I am weak. But he is strong. I don't know if you understand. Because this is what's changing. This is what's changing my life. I don't have to be strong. He's strong, but I know I'm weak. So what protects me? He protects me. Because here's what I know. See, you're not defined. See, somebody here today, this is about to release the biggest weight that you have on your shoulders. Some of you guys, you've been so defined and you're so obsessed and you don't even understand why, because I was in the same boat. It's like, why does that bother me so bad? If you heard, they're talking about me behind my back. Oh, you come in the room and they're all quiet and you're like, okay, fine, no problem. I'm going to get them because I'm telling you what, I'm not going to have this all the time. I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm going to pound them and I'm going to pound them before they pound me. They're never going to want to mess with me again. I'm big. King Kong ain't got nothing on me, right? I'll burn this place to the ground, right? That's not a follower of Jesus. Because you know why I'm so obsessed? Because what they said really bothers me. What they said defines me to my core. But you know what day I learned? You are not who people say you are. You know why it's bothering you? Every time you're bothered by somebody gossiping about you, every time you are stuck in hurt and resentment because somebody said something about you, some of these people are dead and gone and their words are still playing out in your head. You can't play. You can't do it. You can't do it, fatty. You can't do this. You can't do that. You're nothing. You're nobody. You'll never be anybody. It's because their words are defining you. And it's not their words. It's Satan's words that is death. Jesus came to bring life. And you are not who they say you are. You're who God says you are. You're not even who your internal negative monologue is defining you and defining you and defining you, and it's the reason why you're hurting other people. But you're not who they say you are. You're who God says you are. And the day you understand that, I am strong because of him. I'm strong not because I'm strong. I'm weak. But when I focus on him, I'm strong. So when their words bother me, I have to change my focus and stop listening and go, it doesn't matter that they say that about me. Aren't you going to defend yourself? I don't need to. You know, there's Jesus, after being beaten, was told, aren't you going to defend yourself? Did you know that? You can read about it in the book of Luke. It's amazing. On his way to the cross, he was beaten, and this arrogant Roman who was horrible stood before him and said, hey, if I have the ability to take your life or to give it to you, you better speak up. And Jesus, it says he opened not his mouth. Because he says, my Father has the ability to give life and take life. I don't care what you say. It doesn't matter. You don't define me anymore. That's where you need to be. See, you don't need to retaliate. You need to change your focus. These people are toxic. Okay, well, you can stop the relationship. You don't have to continue down the path with abusive people. You don't have to keep doing it, but stop engaging, because here's what I know. Hate isn't going to stop hate. And if I'm hating and you're hating, then who is doing the loving? I'm weak because he's strong. And I understand this is going to take a while to grasp. But if we were to apply this, can I tell you what would change? Everything. If we were to say, hey, every time somebody gossips about me, instead of coming back at it, we were to say, hey, I'm going to change my focus to God. Hey, pray for me because this person's really bothering me, but I can't give you the details, but here's what I want you to do. Pray that these words don't define me anymore. I'm not going to listen to them anymore. I'm not going to listen to it. So I might have to block some people that have my phone. I don't have to talk to them. Right? You don't have to engage. Well, they're calling me, so block their number. Unfriend them. Oh, that's it. You can unfriend people on Facebook. You don't have to read everything in the news feed. You don't have to rant about every single situation that you're not part of the problem or solution, that we could start to speak the words of life. You get it? But we can't do it as long as we're gossiping. It will destroy everything. And Satan is having his greatest day. And the greatest poison, the cancer of the church. I tell you something, cancer goes a long ways, don't it? The cancer of the church is gossip. And next Sunday, we're going to come back and we are going to talk about how to be an influencer and how our church could go further reaching people for the gospel. But if we don't get a handle on the gossip, let me tell you something, we might as well not even come next week because it ain't going to work. It's like going, hey, I'm eating right, but I have cancer. It ain't going to work. But we can eradicate it today. We can start today. We can exercise it today. And some of us, we need to start right where we are. And here's the problem that I see, okay? Here's where we're at. Some of us, you're going to take this today, and here's what you're going to do. You're going to go, I'm just so bad, I guess I just have to give up. And it's just like a diet where you go, I've blown it so bad, you know what? It just doesn't matter what I do. That's Satan. Satan also wants to say, well, yeah, I hear what John's saying, but the truth is you just don't understand, and there's all kinds of excuses why we can't do it the way God says it, and we're just going to have to keep doing it because everybody does it. Everybody does it. Yeah, I know everybody does it. And it's the reason why Satan is winning. Right? But some of us are going to say, hey, you know what? It's right. But I don't want to get stuck in guilt, and I don't want to get stuck in denial, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a step towards God. And I'm going to start, and I know that I can't get it all right, but when I get these situations, I'm going to start to feel it, and I'm going to take a pause, and before I open my big, fat mouth, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go, hey, you know what? I can't engage in this. Hey, you know what? This just ain't for me. Hey, you know what? This relationship just doesn't work. Hey, you know what? Have you talked to that person yet? Hey, and all of a sudden, all over this place, it's probably going to be hard at first, but when it happens, the power of God is going to infuse us. And these people that we gossiped about, when we start telling the truth and we start telling it in love, they're going to start to change. What if we were that kind of church? What could God do with a place like that? I don't know, but come back next week and we'll talk more about it. But here's the thing. For today, what do you need to do with this? Can I pray for you? Let's stand for prayer.